All right, this week we have Paul G. Hurley's Goodman, Young Goodman Brown's Heart of Darkness. I want to kind of get into this a little bit. We had Young Goodman Brown last week, and this week we had a little bit of reading on formalism. And now we actually have a formalist critique by Hurley. And I kind of wanted to set it up a little bit because I really think that Hurley does a fantastic job demonstrating formalism and, even more importantly, demonstrating how to write about literature. He does a fantastic job with that. I was a little bit upset with the OER on formalism because it's like, here is a poem about an urn, and it's shaped like an urn, and formalism. And I really think it did kind of a disservice by oversimplifying a rather straightforward idea that the text is what we're going to be deriving meaning from. Sure, it's shaped like an urn, it's about an urn. That is formalism. It is really about the form shaping the content. And that actually is more of a metaphor for how we shape our analysis of a piece of literature. And that's really important. We're not thinking about whatever we think the author's biography might be. We're not thinking about what the author's intentions might be. We're not even thinking about what our reaction to a piece of literature would be or what we would hope it was about. We're not trying to create connections where there are none. It is a very fundamentalist reading of a piece where we're sticking to that piece specifically. If we look at Young Goodman Brown, for example, just think about it as a paraphrase or a summary. Oh, a young man goes in the woods. He sees signs of evil everywhere, and he loses his faith in humanity. That's kind of what it is. No, that's the summary of it, direct, right? It's not really the art of it. It's not the message of it. A formalist would look at it and say, okay, that's a cool story, but how does this piece of literature evoke that? How is it communicating it? And that's where we have to start to think about like the dark forest. We have to think about the dreamlike uncertainty. We have to think about the use of ribbon. We might think about the ambiguity that's created, whether or not this is something that's terrible and happened to young Goodman Brown, or whether this is something where we look at it and think, I'm a little suspicious of young Goodman Brown. I think he went out there looking for evil, but really looking at the text itself in order to support that. So it's really not just a simple, this man walked into the forest, saw evil, and lost his faith in humanity. But we're thinking about what are the different names? What are the different components of the story? How is it all shaped? How is ambiguity used? How is the language structuring this? What exactly is Hawthorne showing us in this text itself? So, again, the big thing is the content of the literature is not simply the plot, right? It's the form that shapes the meaning of that content. And so it really is a close reading with the idea of interpreting it. Okay. All right, so I want to get into exactly what we have here with Hurley. Hurley does a fantastic job. I print this up, by the way. It's very nice. It gives you space to write in the margins. I like to write a lot of notes and also highlight. So he sets this up with a summary that lays out the basic impasse that we're at with young Goodman Brown. He's giving us some summary, he's giving us some background, and he's saying, hey, there's two different ways that you can look at this. Really pay attention to how he utilizes sources with this. He goes out and finds fantastic sources to plug in to kind of show, demonstrate, support his point on it. This does a lot of cool things because it demonstrates his own ethos, his own authority on this. It makes him kind of a scholar on it. He's done the research. He's found the texts that support his ideas, and now he's bringing them to this to kind of lay it out. Now, not part of the formalist reading because he's bringing outside texts. You might be thinking that. But what he's doing is supporting his contention that there's a couple of different ways that people have read this story. And he lays out the first one of the allegory about the depravity of man, right? Just the idea that young Goodman goes out there and he sees all of this evil and he's wondering what's going on. And then he's kind of showing us the second part, which is young Goodman Brown's a bad dude. And he put his faith on a shelf, left her at home, and made a conscious decision to go into the woods at a very specific time, night, in order to seek out evil. So when you're reading this introduction, just really look at the deft way that Hurley lays that out. He gives us the summary from young Goodman Brown necessary for us to understand and engage with his arguments, and then also supports it very nicely with outside resources that kind of support his retelling of the story, or I'm sorry, his fact that there's two different perspectives or two different schools of thought in the approach of this story. Um, as we move through, and on 411 in the second paragraph, he kind of lays out the idea. He doesn't say, "Oh, I'm a formalist and I'm going to do a formalist reading of it," but he demonstrates it because he says, he gives us a quote by Levin, and then after Levin, he says, "Confessing diabolical inspiration, I shall take a chance on being impertinent because I'm not convinced that questions dealing with man's nature and the human heart are beyond the limits of fiction. I believe the reader has every right to wonder if the townspeople are actually cohorts of the devil." And so he's still telling us, I'm sticking to the text. I'm going to do a textual analysis of this. And that's what he engages with throughout this entire critique. He goes down a little bit further, and you can find his thesis very explicitly laid out after he kind of gets us through all of the setup of the contentions laid out within young Goodman Brown's analysis among the critics. And he says, my point here is, thesis, that young Goodman Brown is a subtle work of fiction concerned with revealing a distorted mind. I believe the pervasive sense of evil in the story is not separate from or outside its protagonist. It is in and of him. His visions are the product of his suspicion and distrust, not the devil's wiles. Goodman Brown's dying hour is gloomy because the evil in his own heart overflows. He sees a world darkened by the dreariness of sin. Hawthorne has given us every reason to read the story as a revelation of individual perversion. The story, after all, is entitled Young Goodman Brown, and speculation about man's nature or the talents of the devil are out of place. Speculations coming from outside the text that are adding more than what's there, he's not going to engage in them. He's going to stick with things that he can support, utilizing the text itself. I really think this is a fantastic formalistic critique of young Goodman Brown. He does a fantastic textual analysis of it. And again, as just somebody who likes well-structured writing about writing, he does a fantastic job setting up his discussion, letting us know what the controversy is, giving us both sides, giving us some research to kind of support those ideas, and then giving us a very fantastic thesis that he goes on to attack. All right. Hopefully that'll get you into this bit of reading. I think it's rather accessible. I'm hoping that that little bit of a head start analysis will help turn the key and get you into this. All right. Thanks a lot.